So we're sitting in the Mashabane riverbed this afternoon. It's a prominent dry watercourse that meanders through the central parts of Londolozi. And we're sitting underneath an apple leaf tree that contains a small version of one of Londolozi's smallest owl species. It's the chick of a pearl-spotted owlet. And it's close to independence now. It's not a tiny fluffy chick. It's calling. Shame, I think, trying to get its parents to come and feed it. There's another one calling just behind us over here. And I think there might be a third one further down. So they'll stay in the vicinity of the nest for a few weeks after they learn to fly, and they'll be fed by the parents until eventually they head off by themselves. And yeah, I mean, 2 or maybe 3 chicks, that's good going by the parents, because I think they lay up to 4 eggs. I don't know how many they laid in the first place, but 3 chicks or even 2 is a successful clutch, so good for them. This morning we're down in the grasslands with the Mawela male. I say with, we're actually a long way away. We're probably about 100 meters away from him. He's a skittish male who we don't see that often. He's not very happy in the daylight when the vehicles are around. I say daylight specifically because you often find that leopards that are unrelaxed, that aren't habituated, they calm down quite a bit after dark. It's kind of when there's this natural cloak over them and they feel a little bit more, a little bit more comfortable with the situation. But this male, he's up in the tree. He's got a zebra kill. That sounds quite extreme, but it's a foal, although it is a fairly large one. This leopard was born in the Sabi Sand Reserve, so naturally you would expect him to grow up having seen vehicles, be a little bit more comfortable when the Land Rover's viewing him. It's not the case. He spent most of his life down in these southwest grasslands, and the long grass and the fewer roads preclude us from finding leopards as consistently as we might in other parts of the reserve. Yeah, so he's a little bit nervous. I'll put in a link now to a video we filmed last year during lockdown where we saw him very briefly, not far from here, where he was also pretty skittish. We hardly even got a view. So we're keeping our distance. We're staying at about 100 meters. This is part of the habituation process. Usually this happens when leopards are younger, when they're cubs. We slowly build up their trust in the vehicles. In this case, we're doing it to an adult male, but it's cool. It's part of the process. So we're just going to sit, let him relax. I think he wants to feed, but he's just watching us carefully. We're just going to sit and give him some time, let him get used to us, and then slowly but surely, if we get sightings like this more frequently, he'll start relaxing a little bit. It's not the fullest canopy on a marula tree that you'll ever see, so there's a chance that if he starts getting hot, he'll want to come down and seek shade somewhere. He did look like moving the kill at one stage, where he did move it. It looked like he wanted to come down from the tree. I think he's just feeling a bit exposed in the daylight on a kill with us here. But he changed his mind. Maybe there's a hyena around that we don't know of. He's now peacefully feeding. That means he's happy with us being here. I mean, Sean's just joining in the background. So this will be a test. Because he's relaxed again, it means, okay, we can bring in a second vehicle now, see if he's happy. And there we go, Sean switched off and the leopard's gone straight back to feeding. So good sign in the habituation process. So this morning we just stopped with a couple of giraffe bulls that are necking in front of us. It's not particularly serious, it's just more sparring than anything else. But you'll generally find as the bulls get older and they start entering that realm of size at which they can compete with the big bulls for mating rights to the females, the sparring becomes a little bit more serious. With younger bulls, it's generally a little bit gentler. It's just a slow swing of the head and tap each other lightly. As the bulls get older, it becomes a little bit more serious. And these two, well, they're not really having a proper go at each other. There's a certain amount of intent in the hits, and you can hear the thuds coming through a little bit more solidly. So a couple more years and they'll be ready to take on the dominant bulls. These guys still have a bit of growing to do. As impressive as they look, as tall as they are, they're still certainly not at full size yet, so yeah, they've got a bit of a way to go. Also, there are a number of other bulls around this area. Some are feeding, some are just observing these two fight. You'll generally find the big adult dominant bulls are solo. Most of the time they're by themselves, not all the time, but it's a good rule of thumb. They will join up with bachelor herds like this briefly and then move on, but most of the time the big bulls are by themselves. But you'll find younger males tending to congregate in these little bachelor groups for a bit, and this is exactly why they get a chance to establish a hierarchy within the group through this gentle sparring. It's nothing too serious, but I imagine there is some kind of ranking that develops within a little group like this, although the reality is they're not going to stay together forever, because giraffes don't really have a set social structure like other herbivores do. It's fairly loose associations. You find them drifting apart and then away again as the mood or the situation dictates. This afternoon we're sitting with a young male cheetah. He was found this morning. He's still in the same place they left him this morning. He's got a fairly full belly, which tells us that he ate something before he was found. So, being pretty full, we didn't anticipate him moving much, but there are a couple of impala rams at the far end of the clearing, about 150 meters away from us. We've lost sight of them for now, but they were coming in this direction behind a thicket. He's just stuck his head up, so he might have heard them moving through the grass from where he is. Don't think he'd be able to see them, but he has woken up and he's a little bit more alert than he was a few minutes ago. So if the impala keep coming in this direction, we might see some action. It's not like he'd be actively hunting in the state he's in, full belly, he'd be satisfied for the day. But if there's an opportunity that presents itself, if an impala comes blundering in, then I don't think he'd be able to resist the temptation to go after it. So let's see what happens. This morning we've come up to look for the Piccadilly female in the north of the reserve, but we just stopped to take some photos and get some footage of a little wood sandpiper that's wading around in a little pool in the Manuleti riverbed. Very relaxed, only about 10 meters from us, and seems fairly oblivious to us here. Well, probably not oblivious, but just doesn't care. There are tracks of the Piccadilly female right here in the riverbed, but they're intermingled with a whole lot of other tracks. Hyena and hippo have come through here, and it looks like she and the cub were spending some time here, so we're going to get last shots of this little wood sandpiper and then see if we can decipher where the tracks go, which way the fresher ones lead. But it does look like it's a day or two old, so our hopes aren't high of finding it very close, but it's a start. One set of tracks, both the mother and the cub come down to the water, then they turn back up again. So the most likely scenario is that they had a kill somewhere up there, have come down to drink, and then have gone back to it. But it's hard to say. There's water everywhere at the moment, but we do know that yesterday evening the Piccadilly female was seen by herself over the hill back near the Sand River. So I think most likely the two of them were together somewhere in this. Well, they were somewhere in this area because the tracks are here. But just judging by freshness, it's quite difficult to age when the sand is wet like this, or damp at least, because when it dries out you can get a fair idea just based on weather and drying rates and the like. But when it stays wet, tracks can look fresh for days at a time. So some of these tracks are fairly clear, but we don't think is from yesterday, maybe the day before, 3 days ago. But it's, like we said, it's a start, so we'll carry on this way and we'll see what we can get. Now, as we came down into this riverbed, it sounded like we got a puncture because there was a psh coming from the tire, but then when we stopped. It looked like something just kind of opened a quick gap between the rim and the tire, so we're hoping as we start now we'll be good to go. It still looks inflated, so our fingers crossed. So we've just stopped briefly to look at a juvenile martial eagle. We ran a story on this young martial a couple of months ago, in fact. We were talking about how it'll stay in the vicinity of the nest for quite a while, up to 8 months. And it's just sitting in a dead tree, calling, and this is most likely it's calling to its parents for some food, calling to its mother, in fact. So the male, when it's still in the nest, the male brings it most of its food. during the fledgling period when it's still hanging around the nest of the adults. It's apparently the female that'll bring most of the food to it, so it's not having much success at the moment. It's just calling plaintively out into the morning. But the parents are probably quite far away hunting. They can have big territories. So yeah, this little one's doing well, and we'll put a link down below for the previous story, but we were saying how there are 2 martial eagle pairs that have raised chicks successfully over the last year, so very positive for the species. So after all that, there's the young marshal calling and calling and calling, seemingly for food. He's actually got food the whole time. There was a kill there that's hidden by the branch. It's kind of just on top, and he's standing on it. So, I don't know, maybe he just didn't like it and he's asking his parents for something different. I think this is the first time I've come across entitlement in a martial eagle. But yeah, he needs a good scolding. Or she, I don't know if it's a male or a female. Couldn't see what the kill was. It looked furry rather than feathery. One of the main sources of food here, one of the main prey species for martial eagles is monitor lizards, but this I don't think was one. You'll see the tail dangling down. But what a cool sighting. A spoilt martial eagle chick that doesn't appreciate what it's been given.